I would like to invite Mrs. Swarna Ramki. Mrs. Swarna Ramki is a managing trustee of Conservation India. Conservation India aims to facilitate nature conservation by providing reliable information. So we were just talking about information, and that comes the next topic, as well as practical knowledge needed to act effectively. She's also the co-founder of Wildlife for Cancer, which offers a rich collection of photographs of Ramki's experiences in India's wildlife. So please welcome Mrs. Swarna Ramki.
Good evening, thank you. I had a story in mind, and I thought of it, and then here we are talking about fake stories and fake narratives. So yeah, that's one of our key problems in our heads is how do we tell our story, because we all do our work and we get so engrossed in our work that we forget to talk about our work, or we get very worked up when we're talking about our work because we are sort of not sure if you're telling it right. Is it actually reaching each one of us? But coming back to the CI story, we all know even the mighty oak starts as a seed. So CI, the idea of a seed was actually it was sown some 15 plus years ago, CI for Conservation India. It was sown in the living room of our house over several discussions, debates that my husband Ramki Srinivasan, many of you would know or have heard of him. And that's where the whole birth of this seed happened. Ramki was a corporate brand marketeer. Then became digital entrepreneur, but the key thread that actually took him through the entire life, and I've seen it because he was an avid birder, and thanks to WWF for all the nature camps and the birding camps that he went when he was in Chennai, and then went on to becoming a wildlife photographer and a conservationist, and that's how CI was born, because CI, we realized at that time, there was no one place or one repository of information of all conservation issues that are happening in the country. We also didn't have enough space to take each other's best practices and actually not reinvent the wheel in many cases. So that's how CI was born. But after that, if you know Ramki, if he is faced with a problem, he has to come up with a solution. So we realize CI now has to grow, just like any tree has to grow branches and has the roots and the networks that he has to have. And he collaborated with a whole lot of people, students, citizen volunteers, scientists, department, forest department, filmmakers. Shekhar Dattatri was our mentor too. Photographers, so a whole lot of people came together, and that's how CI has totally taken on a new role of being an enabler of wildlife conservation and championing biodiversity. Before I give this to Vikram, I just wanted to also quickly tell you about the whole idea of campaigning became our model, and that's how campaigns for conservation happen. And I want Vikram, our colleague here, Vikram Hirisavi, who will take us through a few of those campaigns that CI did.
Thanks, Swarna. Yeah, so been volunteering with Conservation India for about 12 years now. Been mostly on the back office, doing the technology, the product, filling the proposals, sending out mails, running the campaigns. And one of our, we love to talk about this campaign of ours. We've done lots, I'll talk about them. But this, what you see here is a video grab of a very famous, a video which went viral globally and brought a lot of focus on the issue, which is, this is the 100-gram weighing Amur Falcon, which migrates about 22,000 kilometers every year. And this rests, a whole bunch of them, millions of them actually, rest in what is known as the Doyang Reservoir in Nagaland. And what happened here was there was lots of fishermen, and there was never a conflict between the fishermen and the falcons, because the falcons used to nest, their roosting was really high up in the trees, because it's a valley and they were really high up in the trees and nobody could really hunt them. But then the fishermen discovered Chinese fishing nets, and they realized that, during the season, instead of fishing, all they had to do was to hang up the nets on the trees, and the birds were getting caught in tens of thousands. right? And that video, and this was discovered by Ramki and Banu Aralo and a few other birders everywhere as usual. So they went on a birding hike and they found tens of thousands of them being killed, in this place. And this bird is very special to lots of people across the world because it flies 22,000 kilometers across country. So people around the world were outraged that India was allowing their killing, right? So, but, and it was not just the nets. There was also shooting. There was lots of, other kinds of hunting, a lot of trading going on locally. And all of this was hidden from the wider world. People didn't know about this, right? It's easy to come and say, I'm going to go and confiscate those guns. I'm going to go and beat them up. I'm going to complain to the forest department. The forest department will come and do this. It's not going to work. And if anything, today has been a chronicling of, how solutions need to include people, local people, and what happens in their lives, right? And that's really, what struck everyone in our team when you looked at this photo. Because what you see here, if you're a wildlife lover and an animal lover sitting in a city is, oh, this is so sad. I mean, you're seeing wild birds being slaughtered and carried home. But the reality, if you step away from your ivory tower, is it's somebody taking food home. It is somebody's school fees. It is somebody's electricity. It's somebody's livelihood. And you don't just walk up there and say, I'm going to take away your livelihood from thousands of people and hope to succeed when you walk away. Because Ramki team, everybody was living in Bangalore. So if you complain there and you come back here, then what happens? They're going to go back to doing what they are doing. So like with everything else, a solution for wildlife problems is always about the people. It's very rarely about the animal itself, right? It's rarely about the species itself. And that's really what happened. It was a humongous effort done within about record time, about 6 to 9 months. And the role of, and that is when the realization came to us of what our role really was. Because as Conservation India, we were mainly the coordinator for all of these things. Ramki was there on the ground, of course, but Banu Aralo was doing incredible work as an individual. We said we need to enable her. We helped her set up the NGO. We worked in creating these designs. There were people from across the world who offered to help. That's a badge that was handed over to school kids. There was a football tournament created. There was lots of movies made by various people. Shekhar made a fantastic movie which went viral again. It won awards across for conservation. And of course, Rohan Chakravarti, as usual, had to put up his cartoons on the issue. There was lots and lots of these efforts across the board, right? And all of this was also backed by procedure, what we call as the 3 Ps. There is policy, procedure, and politics. All of this is politics, because when you influence people, that's politics. Politics is not just voting and fighting with BJP and Congress. That's not what politics is. Politics is influencing your people and getting them to participate in what is happening, right? And then there is policy. The law clearly said you can't be hunting those, right? So it's not that we ignored that. We went there, we followed what the law said. There was procedures, there were complaints made. There was a petition given to the Chief Minister of Nagaland. The forest departments were done. There were formal police complaints lodged. All of that happened in parallel, but that didn't mean we locked up all of these hunters and beat them up. That doesn't work that way either, right? But you need to follow those, because tomorrow if this doesn't work, you still have the courts to reach out to, right? So all of those had to be taken into account. So the 3 Ps, like we said, had to be followed, but that was all in the background. And a lot of it was helped by a massive signature campaign that we ran. Quite often we think a signature campaign, you just sign something online and you're done. It's not. I mean, what you actually see behind the signature campaign is a humongous amount of work that goes in offline to actually make that campaign a success, right? And that's where all of this happened. And so what do you get out of all of this? When you succeed, success looks like this, right? That's a sky full of Amur Falcons. That's millions of them flying over the Doyang Reservoir again, not being worried about hunted by people. Now what happened to those people, the fishermen? A huge number of them turned into tour guides, homestay owners. They're now doing their fishing in the off-season, and on-season, they're getting people from all over the world who come there, and now there is a shortage of homestays in that area because everybody wants to see this site. And that's what success looks like in conservation, right? And of course, when you succeed, you get even ministers coming to villages which have never seen any politician step in, right? So that's the good part of success. but it's not always good. In conservation, the last 12 years, I have learned that you need a lot of patience. You'll see more losses than wins. And it's good that, we all grow up with being told by the Bhagavad Gita not to focus on the results, but on the action. And that's what we continued, and we've done that. We did that with the Narcondam hornbills. We fought a campaign. These are very crazy creatures. They refuse to breed outside of a small 6 square kilometer island in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. There are just 300 of them. And we fought the good fight to say that the Navy should not be putting up a radar there. But it's also the most strategic island for India from a defense perspective. But they still went and did it later on, but it worked. The ministry heard us. We did a campaign and they actually blocked the project, right? And it gave a lease of life to the hornbill. This is still ongoing. If you read the papers and you live in Bangalore, you'll know that Hesarghata, there's this massive proposal that I remember writing into the night, working with bird watchers, working with forest department, working with everybody. But what we saw to most people is just please click here with your name and email ID, and that's all that's needed. But what went behind that was a massive, I think it's about 80, 90 pages that we literally typed up, when we proposed this. And this fight is still going on, waiting for the Hesarghata grasslands to be declared a conservation reserve so that no film city comes up there. Karnataka film industry wants a film city there. The dairy industry wants a dairy research institute set up there. We are hoping it stays as grasslands, right? And of course, there's lots more. I won't spend time talking about all those. We did a lot of them. Like I said, some succeeded, some didn't. And over a period of time, we came up with this framework. I just want to leave you with this here, which is, and this is what Swarna was referring to us, trying to now enable others to do this, because we've realized that it's not enough for us to know how to do this, but to kind of come up with a framework which starts helping others come up with this, however small. It could be an individual, it could be 2 people. We've also worked with individuals who are part of very large non-profits, right? People within NCF, people within WCS, we work with them to make sure their projects work, because we only care for what happens with wildlife and the people around it, right? They could, whatever their affiliation, we work with them. Very simply, you initiate, you look at what we call in the tech industry as OKRs, objectives and key results. Once you know what you're going after, then you start planning the 3 Ps that I spoke about, because you need to understand what's on the ground. Each of the people that you've spoken today, all of you have spoken actually about the politics, right? When you talk about elephant conservation, you talk about working with the todas, you talk about anything that, goes on with lantana, anything else that we do, all of it really comes down to your deep, and these successes have come because people have understood the politics behind every site. What is the dynamics there? What is your local politician think? Which power party is in power? All of those things matter. So once you plan, then you start reaching out for collaboration. You work with experts, you work with scientists, you work with lawyers, you work with communication designers. We work with so many cartoonists, designers, everybody to get the message across. Then you enable people. Once you set up all of this, and that is where we start handing over to the NGO which is actually working on the ground, like we did with Bano, and then we take it there. The enabling happens, we help them with proposal writing, raising funds where needed, see what we could do, and then quite often many of them need help with communication. We use our social media channels, our website to communicate, and then just monitor the execution. We do not get into the execution because we know ultimately the credit goes to the one who executes, and we want the credit to go to the nonprofits that we actually work with and not with us. So there are many stories out there where we don't always put our name. But we sleep well at night because we know we've helped, save India's wildlife. So that's on that.
Thank you so much.
I'll just pass over.
I want to ask you a very important question. I'm sorry to butt in. See, the thing is, this is exactly what I'm trying to say, that Ramki, who is somebody that I also knew, he was head of marketing, and he was an intercept, and he came from corporate life, and therefore he understood marketing. He understood the concept of campaigning, and that skill set is what he's brought into Conservation India. And that is what is so clearly showing up here, that there is somebody from hardcore marketing background who's able to have created this platform for every NGO and for so many of the great amount of work that is done. And that's the reason for this this particular impact initiative, to bring in this corporate expertise on how to put it together for the great NGOs and the great work being done, so that the communication is clear.
Absolutely.
And it's crystal clear. And what is so wonderful is that this sign-up campaigners work. I mean, I think this is the great eye-opener that, these sign-up campaigns work. And therefore, one should do it. I think a round of applause for that, because, we always kind of say, no, it doesn't work. So this is something that is, that's good news for us, Swarna. And, what more would you like to add?
Yeah,
For me, it is about, when you brought in the whole Ramki thing, it was, yes, he had the skills, he learned the skills of marketing, like Mr. Paul said, it's something that is a technical skill that you can get. But I think it's also about the deep commitment towards nature and wildlife that he had, and it's also about dogged perseverance. Because in conservation, and I'm sure all of you will agree, and if you're not in the space, you require patience. You will never get any results overnight. It is not like your quarterly meetings that you can have in corporate and say, I have X% increase in my targets or increase in my budgets. And so you would never be able to do that. So sometimes the waiting is 15 years. Sometimes the waiting is pretty much lifetime, right?
Yeah.
So given that, it's that perseverance and be at it and not look at the result like you said. And that's what, because you're doing the right thing at the same time, right? And collaboration. Somewhere I think we forget that we have to talk to each other. Somewhere we are not talking to each other, we are not learning from each other, and that networking skills, when, I've seen many cases where two people will not work with each other but work with Ramki. Somewhere that we need to, like Van said, leave our egos aside. We have to put our egos aside and work for the bigger cause. And that's what Conservation India's purpose is going to be. And that's what I would like to carry on, not just as a legacy for Ramki, but as the interest is larger than, the cause is larger. We must accept it, that the cause is larger, because if we don't have earth, we are not there.
And Swarna, you're a real inspiration. Absolute inspiration, considering I've known you for more than a decade and met Ramki and met you. Absolute inspiration for the way she's carried forward the great work that Ramki did with her. I mean, she just was there as a silent spectator at that time, but today up in front with this beautiful smile. And yes, the idea is more communication, better communication, and today with the World Wide Web, it becomes much easier, and we just need the attention, this phone.
Yeah.
We need that attention of the people, and that's what we should all aim for. So thank you so much for this presentation.
Thank you
again. Thank you.
Yeah, I just leave the stage with just a genuine request. Please do contribute in your own way, but generously to the causes of conservation. And CI is a great enabler, that much I can tell you. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you for giving your time. Thank you so much, Mimi. This is a wonderful organization.
Really, thank you. I mean, it's been absolutely an eye-opener to everybody, and I'm sure of that.